Meet Elagabalus, the most craziest, maddest, vilest, and most degenerate Roman emperor you have never heard about. Because while you might know Caligula or Nero, this guy is so messed up he makes them look like saints. You see, meaning he inherited an empire at a time where his brain still had the consistency of wet cement. And wet cement does not mix well with absolute power. You see, from the time he was 7, the boy started asking his mother, "How can I become a woman?" So she brought him to the best physicians in Rome to see if they could help her son with his condition. Now, you're probably thinking, whoa, hold up, the kid isn't even a man yet. How could he get married? And well, that's the thing. He didn't marry a woman. It is said that he threw gold coins from windows, enjoying seeing common folk fight over the riches. He also held lavish feasts, inviting 8 men of only one type, bald, short or fat. Not satisfied with just having an actual army of loyal guards by his side, he assembled another one, but not an army of men, but of women. They called themselves the Lady Army, and the emperor would parade them around in chariots while they chanted, "Long live Our Lady." He invited 8 bald men and 8 short men to be his priests, and granted them each a silver crown, and he lavished gold coins on the common folk. However, as time passed, the people of Rome grew tired of Elagabalus and his shenanigans. The spoiled teenager had grown up, but not in a good way, and so the Roman Senate finally had enough and sent him to meet his demise at the hands of his own grandmother, Julia Maesa. And yes, you heard that right, he wanted to be called a lady. But when Maesa arrived to take the boy, the soldiers guarding him refused to let her in, unless she was willing to bend down and submit to him, and murdered at just 18. So remember, kids, if you want to grow up to be a real man, stay away from makeup, don't try to become a woman, and never, ever stab your grandmother in the throat, because otherwise you'll end up dead at 80. So the grandmother did as she was told. Then she entered the bedroom and told the kid it was time for him to go with her. However, the spoiled teenager wanted to delay the inevitable for a little longer. And as his grandmother bathed him, he drew a knife and stabbed her in the throat. And once he even unleashed poisonous snakes into the audience at the gladiator games and watched with amusement as the crowds panicked and fell victim to poisonous bites. If that doesn't sound like the action of a spoiled teenager with too much money and no adult supervision, I don't know what does, but it gets worse. Instead, he picked 2 men, Heracles and Zodicus, and married them in a public ceremony in the Circus Maximus. He then paraded them around on chariots like a pair of horses and whipped them as they pulled him along. He also organized chariot races with 8 pairs of gay male charioteers competing for his amusement. In fact, he wanted to be a real goddess. Why? Well, because according to Cassius Dio, one day he woke up in a bad mood and decided to declare himself the goddess of the moon. And the Romans played along because by that point, they were all just sick of the whole system and figured a lunatic in charge of the empire is better than a non-lunatic trying to act like he is a god. Plus, Elagabalus knew how to throw a party. And he chained chariots to chariots like horses and whipped them as they pulled him around. But it wasn't just horses he chained to chariots. One day, he chained a golden chariot to a priestess and whipped her as she pulled him along. He also called one of them his husband and allowed him to sleep in his bed. And if that sounds like a lot, buckle up because it gets worse. However, none of them could offer a solution, except one. According to Roman historian Cassius Dio, there was one doctor willing to take on the task, but he needed more time to work on a solution. And by that time, Elagabalus offered him a huge sum of gold. Of course, it's also possible that the emperor just really wanted to become a woman, but I'll let you decide which version you prefer. Let me explain. So Elagabalus gave him 20,000 gold pieces and sent him on his way. But here's the thing. According to Cassius Dio, after handing over the money, the physician ran away to Athens and never returned. Maybe he did indeed head to the Greek capital to study medicine and never came back. Or maybe he simply pocketed the money and realized that turning the emperor into a woman was probably not worth the effort. Unfortunately, history doesn't say. The young emperor ruled not just with gold and silk, but also with makeup, perfumes, and lots of scandal. See, from the time Elagabalus was born, his parents knew he was destined to be a ruler. Anyway, moving on to more YouTube-friendly things. The emperor also hosted feasts, inviting 8 men of only one type, bald, short, or fat. Once he unleashed poisonous snakes into the audience at the gladiator games and watched with amusement, as the crowds panicked and fell victim to poisonous bites. It is also said that he chained women to chariots like horses and whipped them as they pulled him around. But that was nothing compared to how he treated his own palace. That's because, unlike other emperors, he made sure to make the common folk feel included in his debauchery. For instance, he would organize chariot races with 8 pairs of gay male charioteers competing for his amusement, and if that sounds shocking to you, wait till I tell you about his fashion sense. Because while the rest of the Roman elite were wearing boring old togas, Elagabalus made sure to stand out. See, he was obsessed with looking beautiful, and the more feminine he looked, the better. To achieve his desired effect, he would wear dresses, apply heavy eyeliner, rouge and perfume, and demand to be called lady by his guards. To the ancient Romans, This must have been quite a sight to behold. His mother, Julia Misa, was the daughter of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. So when her son was born, she said, "This boy will either become a great man or a great woman." While we don't know what she meant by that, we do know that from the age of 2, he would watch men getting whipped in taverns, go chariot racing without restraint, and enjoyed throwing gold coins from towers, delighting in watching common folk fight over the riches. "I am already an emperor," he would announce dramatically to anyone who would listen. "Do not think that because I am a child I am not capable of punishing those who have done me wrong. I shall grow up and be terrible." And well, he definitely grew up to be terrible. You see, while Elagabalus might have been crass, cruel, and utterly depraved, the Romans loved him for it. However, Elagabalus wanted to go even further. He wanted to be more than just look like a woman. He wanted to actually become one. Anyway, the doctor's name was Zodicus, and he told the emperor he would need 3 years to complete his research. But whether it was due to the influence of his mother, or his obsession with all things female, Elagabalus decided to get married. In fact, it gets so bad that I cannot show you some of the things Elagabalus did on YouTube, which is why I encourage you to check out my account for the full story. See, the emperor essentially turned the imperial palace in Rome into a gigantic brothel. He chained women to chariots like horses and whipped them as they pulled him around. And if that wasn't enough to convince you that Elagabalus was beyond saving, he delighted in throwing gold coins from towers, delighting in watching common folk fight over the riches. And here's the thing, the spoiled kid wasn't even satisfied with the worship the Romans already gave him. No, he wanted more. For instance, to celebrate becoming the goddess of the moon, he ordered the finest silks and velvets to decorate the temples. You see, the plan was to bring Elagabalus to his grandmother, who would raise him properly and put an end to all that nonsense. But that would be his last mistake. Soon after, he was arrested, stripped, tied up, dragged through the streets of Rome.